around the world, in any country, no matter how remote it may be, occasionally the supernatural mingles with reality. Tonight, I relate to you one of those occasions. From the tail end of the beautiful Appalachian Mountains, in the heart of the South, this is Alabama Adventures. And welcome to this Alabama Adventure. Just want to say a couple of things real quick before we get started on this, that this one is going to be a little bit different than some of the adventures that we have done. What I would like to do is to relate a little story to all the children out there. This is for all of our young viewers, and I do hope we have a lot of them. I've been told that we do, and so I just decided I would come up with a little bedtime story for some of our younger folks that enjoy Bigfoot. We attended a paranormal meeting over the weekend up in Rainsville, Alabama. Had a great time up there, and talking about the Appalachian Mountains, I got to spend the night high on the very top of Lookout Mountain in Fort Payne, Alabama. A very memorable occasion for me. I would once again like to tell the people who let us spend the night in their cabin up there how much I appreciate it, and I really had a great time. I really look forward to getting back up there and doing some more Bigfoot hunting and research with all of you up there. So tonight, if you will, just bring the kids around and tell them that Sasquatch Jim has got a little bedtime story. Maybe it won't bore the parents too bad to where they go to sleep too. But anyway, it's just a little something that I wanted to do for the kids, because at this paranormal meeting, we had a lot of young people up there, and of course, I had Chico up there with me. And it seemed like all of the younger Bigfoot researchers and paranormal enthusiasts that were up there were carried away with Chico, as my little granddaughter was whenever they were both very little. And that's been several years ago now, as Chico's about 14. And anyway, time passes on. So if you will, just sit back tonight and listen to this storybook, Bigfoot Adventure. Okay, now here we go with Nelson the Bigfoot Builds a House. And now this story was originally published in a book many years ago entitled The Ravens of a Lunatic. Once upon a time. Now I want you to keep in mind something else before we get started about Once Upon a Time. Once upon a time was a long time ago, but it was a very important time in history, because a lot of books you've probably already read or you will read begin once upon a time. So whenever this once upon a time was, there was a lot going on, because they just wrote book after book after book about once upon a time. Once upon a time, there was this Bigfoot or Sasquatch that lived in a cave in the woods. He was a big old reddish brown Bigfoot, and he liked to go walking with his pet coyote named Chavez. Now Nelson had acquired Chavez in Texas just after the Gopher Rebellion that hit southern Texas many years ago. You probably remember that war that placed the Bigfoot population against the Gophers over a land dispute in the 1950s. Chavez had, hold on a minute, there's certain things you can and can't say now, so to be politically correct. You can't say Mexican anymore, but that's what Chavez was. He was a Mexican coyote. But now, to be politically correct and not make anybody mad, you have to say Chavez had Latino ancestry. So now, as we try to continue this story on our third battery failure, let me find out where I was. Chavez had actually moved here to Marengo County in Alabama shortly after being discharged from the military for medical reasons. He suffered COPD, which is Coyote Old-Timer's Paw Disease, and once a female foxy-looking doctor had mistakenly prescribed that he take motor oil orally to impede progression of this disease, and it left him not being able to breathe well. But that's a whole nother story. One day, Nelson and Chavez walked to the edge of town. They heard a loud hammering noise and peeked out behind the bushes to see a carpenter building a house. Nelson was fascinated, and every day they returned to watch. He saw the carpenter hammering the nails and watched as the house took shape and grew. They watched as the floor went into place, as the walls stood up, and as a roof dropped over the entire structure. Soon a porch popped out on the front of the house. "How much nicer than our old cave," said Nelson to Chavez. "I want a house to live in." And so the two returned to the woods and began gathering sticks, limbs, logs, and pieces of wood. Chavez would carry the wood on his back like a pack mule sometimes, and sometimes even say words like hee-haw or boy howdy, sure enough, and several other Southern English words he had learned from watching Sasquatch Jim. Who? Just as if he were living on the tail end of the Appalachian mountain chain. Well, sweet tater pie and shut my mouth. Then thought Nelson, "I gotta have a hammer." And he began singing, "If I had a hammer, I'd hammer in the morning, I'd hammer in the evening, I'd hammer all day through, and I could smash my thumb and scream and shout and let it turn all black and blue and hurt. My life would be complete," he thought, "if he only had a hammer." So he found a rock and tied it to a stick for a handle and made a hammer. Primitive Bigfoot was now on his way to becoming civilized. "I'll need nails," he thought, and went back to the place the carpenter was building the house to look for nails. It was almost dark, and the carpenter had already gone home for the day. So Nelson and Chavez found several nails on the ground. They found a small brown bag in a trash can and used it to carry the nails back to their construction site. Nelson noticed some nails had heads on one end and other nails had heads on the opposite end. He asked Chavez about this phenomenon. Chavez explained that depending on the end of the nail that the head was on, that was the side of the house where it could be driven into. "It's good to have a retired military coyote amongst us," Nelson commented. "The COPD doesn't seem to affect your logical mind," he added. The next morning Nelson was up by dawn and very busy. Hammer, 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 one nail after another. In a little while all the animals of the forest were walking up, asking what all the unnecessary noise was. "What are you doing? What are you doing?" screamed Jaybird Johnson, who was the local blue jay. "I'm building a house," replied Bigfoot Nelson. "You're sure making a lot of noise," said the other birds. "We use grass and straw. It's quiet." "Well, I'm too big to live in a nest way up in a tree," said Nelson. The beavers from the pond wandered up and asked, "What you doing, big guy?" "I'm trying to build a house," Nelson answered. "We use mud to hold our house together, not nails," they told him. "Mud won't be strong enough for my house," Nelson said. "But," said one of the neighbors, "the wind will blow through the cracks in your house." Nelson stopped and looked at the walls. There were large cracks. His work halted, as he didn't know exactly what to do about the seriousness of the problem he was now confronted with. He leaned against a tree in the yard and stared at the ground, shaking his head sadly. "This shack ain't going to be as warm as your old cave," added a timid deer. Nelson was so disappointed. From the crowd of forest animals, he could hear their comments. "What an idiot! What a loser! I knew he was never just right. His ma dropped him on his head a few times when he was a baby." "I didn't know that," said the armadillo. "Yeah, she dropped him several times, accidental like. Most of the times it was on purpose, though." Then old Grandpappy Beaver suggested, "Let's all help him. We beavers can bring mud and put it in the cracks." "Oh, thank you, good boys," smiled Nelson. Soon the beavers were bringing tail load after tail load of mud from the pond, pushing it into the cracks and smoothing it out with their broad tails. The rays of sunlight that had shone through the walls were now blocked. Quickly the walls went up and spaces were left for windows and a door. "The rain will come in," said the chipmunk, who also had come to watch. We don't have rain in our house. I guess my house needs a roof, commented Nelson. But how will I ever put a roof on this house? Feeling sorry for the Bigfoot, the leader of the crows said, We'll build you a roof. All the crows, and with the help from all the other birds in the forest, will construct you a thatched roof from straw and hay. And I know just where to get the straw and hay, he laughed. Where will we get the straw and the hay? Asked Peabody, who was an aggravating little Lord God woodpecker. He had received mild brain damage as a youngster when he lived too close to a field of wackybacker, also known as loco weed, crazy little weed, and there are various other names we use here in the South for legal purposes, of course. Well, listen to me, boy, when I'm talking to you, and I'll tell you, snapped Denver the Crow. Old man Charleston has a goofy-looking scarecrow in his cornfield. He worked on it for weeks, thinking he could scare us crows. What a moron! We'll borrow the straw from it for this roof. Ha! 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 That should get the old geezer's blood pressure pumping. With all the birdies working that lived on Jaybird Street, it didn't take long until a new thatched roof was ready to be installed. The day before the installation, Denver Picard, the crow, posted on his Facebook page of a meeting to be that night to plan the massive roof undertaking the next morning. Now, he began at the meeting, you will pick up the roof in your beaks and fly it to the house. Any questions so far? Peabody raised his wing and asked, Let me get this straight. We gotta pick this thing up with our beaks and fly it to the house. What a bright lad you are, said Denver. Brilliant child. You should consider running for president next election. With a mind like yours, you are certainly presidential material. With precision of a well-rehearsed ballet, the next morning the plan went into action. Denver led the operation and communicated through his smartphone to all the other birds. With each small beak, a straw was held tightly, and then hundreds of feathered wings began straining and flapping faster and faster. The wings fluttered up and down. A great roar filled the forest that sounded like 100 thunderstorms, all thundering at the same time. Trees bent as wind currents increased. The ground trembled. Mountains moved. The earth quaked. A great cloud of dust rose high into the sky. Old men grabbed their hearts and fell on their knees. Women fainted. Children cried and ran aimlessly, jumping in nearby rivers and streams to escape the devastation they thought was coming. But after minutes of work that seemed like an eternity, the gigantic roof began to lift slowly upward. From the other animals who watched and had prayed for a smooth liftoff, a deafening cheer went up. Denver flew just in front of the structure and posted on his Facebook page, Houston, we have liftoff. Mark time 9:17 a.m. All systems are go. Then Denver said, Set a course, Mr. Sulu. Steady as she goes. Ahead. Half speed. Course set, replied Mr. Sulu. 107.9. We should reach target in 3 Earth minutes. Make it so, replied Denver. Engage. And slowly the now airborne roof inched toward its final destination. Suddenly, another crow named Spock phoned Denver, and in a commanding voice said, Spock here. Sensor readings indicate the target is now directly below. Mr. Sulu, said Denver, lock on target. Locked on target, replied Mr. Sulu, and with that Denver gave the command to release the roof, and each bird did at exactly the same time. Engage. Without a word and with breath and heart stopped, the massive yellow roof floated slowly down through the blue sky. The wind whistled softly as it made its way toward the walls of the house, and then a light thud was heard, and it set perfectly into position. Now there are those who say that Denver Picard the crow was a somewhat hard-hearted old crow that never showed emotions, but those closest to him said that on this day a slight smile crossed his old weathered beak, and that a tear actually was seen in the corner of his eye, for his chest swelled with pride as he texted, Houston, Sasquatch base here. The eagle has landed. People cheered again. Forest animals danced. Songs were sung and speeches were given for weeks to come. All was right in the world for a change. Nelson now built a door and hung it in the door casing with a sign that read, "Welcome." But one thing was still missing. He needed windows to keep out the wind and to have a place to hang curtains. For without windows, curtains can't do their job and serve absolutely no purpose. "I will go ask the carpenter to help me," thought Nelson, and that afternoon he and Chavez again made the trip to town. They went to the place the carpenter was working and said, "Hello, I need to ask you something." The carpenter dropped his hammer as he looked toward Nelson. "Did you speak to me?" "Indeed I did," answered Nelson. "I didn't know a Bigfoot could talk," said the carpenter. "Most people don't," said Nelson. "They just throw rocks at us or sticks, and sometimes they shoot guns at us. Only a chosen few know to talk to us just like you talk to each other. Try it sometimes. It works." "So what can I help you with?" asked the carpenter. "I need windows in my house," and Nelson explained how he and the other animals of the forest had built the house deep in the woods. "I'll bring you 2 windows tomorrow," the carpenter told Nelson. "You must have glass and putty and a few other little items to install them correctly. It's amazing to learn all this from you that you can talk, things I never knew or even thought of. And if a Bigfoot can build a house, I can certainly put the windows in." And so the carpenter was good to his word and put the windows in the house for Nelson. They all became great friends, Nelson, the carpenter, and all the forest animals. So that Saturday, to celebrate, they had a party to officially declare Nelson's house a good, safe place to live. "I'll invite all my rowdy friends," he thought. The beavers brought fresh water from the pond. It was cool and clear. The crows brought corn they found in some farmer's field. The other animals also brought all kinds of fruit, nuts, and vegetables from the forest. The carpenter and some of the human friends of Nelson even brought a pig to cook in the ground, along with all other party supplies like pickles, ice cream, and prune juice. And some even played music like on their guitars and banjos and fiddles, and they all danced until daylight. They even watched Alabama football on the widescreen TV that night. The world was a safe place to live again, and in each one's little corner of the world, they all lived happily ever after. The end. And so, as I bring this video to a close, now I want to say a very special hello and thank you to some great friends of mine who live high atop Lookout Mountain in Fort Payne, Alabama. As a matter of fact, where they actually live is downtown Lickskillet, Alabama. And yes, there indeed is a town called Lickskillet, and it is right next door to Dogtown. There are some truly wonderful people up there. I am glad that I met you, and I want to thank you one more time for allowing me to spend a few days up there with you and get to know each and every one of you. You are some great friends I will never forget, and I hope to see you again real soon. Anyway, with all that being said, and this story coming to an end, as I always do, I'd like to say hello to my granddaughter Madison. I'd also like to tell you that the Alabama Bigfoot Society is run completely out of pocket, and if you can, and if you're in a position to where you can make a donation, it would be very much appreciated. Would also like to ask you, if you like this video and you like what we're doing down here with our stories and our paranormal investigation and whatever else we may be doing, we would ask you to give us a like and to subscribe to the channel. And with all that being said, I guess I'll be looking for you next time on the next Alabama adventure, getting close to Bigfoot.